Hey everyone, this is Dr. Keith. I'm going to give you guys some help on preparing for the midterm 2 exam with the HTML and CSS portion on it. My plan here is to just walk through creating a website which is very much like the one you're going to be creating on the exam. It's going to integrate a few things. The content that you learned on Codecademy, also the content that was covered in class by me, or if you're another student, by your instructor, but then also the content that's listed, that's reviewed in the first web or the web reading in the packet. So if you go to your packet and take a look at the web development reading, where it talks about folder structure, you may want to go through all that first, or either way I'm going to cover it right here. But all that material will be integrated together on your exam, and I'm going to use an example right here that does all of it. So let's get started. Let's begin by opening Sublime Text. Now on the exam you're going to be able to use any text-only editor, whether it's Sublime Text, Notepad++, Text Wrangler, anything that doesn't give you a preview of what the HTML is going to look like. So let me search for Sublime Text. There it is. Open it up. Fit it into my window here. Alright, I'm going to close out the old stuff that I've done here and start something new. Okay, in fact, I'm just going to delete these entirely. So, let's start by creating a new file. All of these files are going to be in the same folder. That's our website folder. So, File, New File. I'm going to hit Save. Put this in my, let's see, I think it's on my desktop. Here we go, IS201 website. I'm going to call it resume.html. Okay, first thing we need in every HTML5 web page is the doctype tag. Doctype, as you might remember, is what tells the browser that's rendering this page that it's going to follow the HTML5 standard. Next we have our opening HTML tag, closing HTML tag. Oops. Thankfully it wrote it for me. Then we always have a head tag, close head, and then a body tag. Now, interestingly enough, in HTML5, head and body are no longer necessary. In fact, neither is HTML to follow the standard. However, 99% of all websites still use these tags, so you should be familiar with them, and we'll stick with them. Here in the head, I want you to know what the title tag is. Of course, that's just the text that's going to appear in the browser or in the tab of the web page. So we'll call this my resume. Close it. There we go. At this point, let's save it and open it in a browser. Now, how do I open it in a browser? Well, let's go to I'm going to open up Windows Explorer and go to my website where I just made the file. See my file, as long as I see an icon of a web browser right here, that means when I double click it, it's going to open up in a browser. So open this up, fit this into the screen. Alright, blank page. However, I've got the keywords my resume because of my title. Alright, back to Sublime Text. Next thing I want you to know is let's make an H1 tag. This will be, I'm going to tab it in because H1 is a child of body. And I'm going to put my name right here. There we go. Next, I'm going to have paragraph. Maybe I'll put something in here like contact information. I'll put my email address. I'm going to put mark.keith at gmail.com. Now, why do I do that? Well, there are bots that go around the web searching for email addresses that have been posted that they can add to their spam lists. And I'm just trying to make it a little harder for one of these automatic bots or agents to scrape my email off the web. So a person can see it like this and they'll know what I mean when I write the words dot and at. Alright, let's close that p tag. Save. Next, let's add maybe a list of our HTML, of our resume information. So what I want is a numbered list with sub-bullets that are with sub-entities that are bullets and not numbers. So to make a numbered list, I'm going to use OL, which stands for ordered list. I'm going to end the OL down here. Inside of every OL or UL has to be an LI. I can't have any text or any other content in any type of list, whether it's ordered or unordered, that's not also in an LI. So right here, I'm going to start with, let's put education. If I were a student, I'd start with education simply because you probably don't have as much experience. The most impressive part about you is likely your education at this point and not so much your experience. So I'll start with education, go with experience next, and for simplicity's sake, I'm going to do one last section of skills. Alright, so let's save this. Again, LI stands for list item, and that means because this has an LI, education will have a number in front of it because it's an OL rather than a bullet, which I would have to use a UL for. So let's take a look at the browser, refresh the page. Here's all my info. Looks good so far. The H1, the P tag, and the OL are all what we call block elements. A block element is any element that adds or forces a hard line break after the content. So notice how this information comes after this. Well, we never specified any line breaks. That's because H1 has an automatic double line break built in, just like a P tag, automatic double line break built in. Because they have a line break, we call them block elements. There are two types of elements, block elements and inline elements. An inline element is something like the strong, or to bold, or the span tag. Anything that I can put in the middle of a sentence or in the middle of content that won't force a line break. Anyway, let's come back here to Sublime Text and keep moving. At this point, I want to add some sub-bullets under skills. So to add a sub-bullet, I have to create a new either OL or UL block inside of an LI. It has to go in an LI because, again, I can't have anything in an OL or UL that's not directly inside of an LI. So for example, I shouldn't come down here and put a UL for unordered list. UL, whoops, and then start its LIs right here. Let's put one of my skills is HTML, CSS development. Close my LI. Now, the browser, oh, of course, Sublime Text wants me to buy it. No, let me save it. The browser will likely interpret this correctly. So let's go take a look. Sure enough, it added this as a sub-bullet under skills. However, that's not HTML5 compliant because I've got a UL block directly inside of an OL, and I'm not allowed to have anything in an OL or a UL that's not wrapped inside of an LI. Now, don't make the mistake and think that this LI is the one, or that this UL block lives inside of this LI. That's not the case because this LI is closed right here. So, to follow standards, what I'm supposed to do is take this UL block, cut, and paste it right here. Maintain my nesting here properly. Okay, now I'm going to save it. It'll actually look the exact same on this page, except for now it's HTML5 compliant, and it'll look the same across every browser. Well, why did it look right in the first time, and then why do I care if it's not compliant with standards? Well, each browser is smart enough to follow the standards of that we tell it we're following, like HTML5, HTML4, HTML3. However, there is no standard for how they should interpret your mistakes. So each browser will interpret your mistakes differently. The fact that Chrome interprets it correctly, that should not encourage you to learn improper coding, because you may open this up in a mobile browser or something else, and it won't know what we meant when we had this outside of the block, and it could mess things up. So we always want to follow standards. So to follow standards, I'm going to select all my code, Control-C to copy it, and let's go to a page called validator.w3.org. Okay, this W3 is the standards body that decides on what standard HTML and CSS is. And so they've provided this tool that lets us validate our code to see that we're following standards. And I can give it a URL, but my web page lives on my computer, so it doesn't have a URL yet. Well, I could simply upload the file right here and that would work, but it's also very easy to just copy and paste code into this validate by direct input. So copy, paste, hit check, and it says this document was successfully checked as HTML5. Awesome. Now there are some warnings, but we're not going to worry about those. If I were to put this back out where it used to be, out here, whoops. Okay, remember, it still looks right here. Nothing's changed. But now if I copy all this code and paste it into the validator and hit revalidate, it's going to tell me, whoop, error found. You've got a problem, one error. And I scroll down here and it says, I'm going to pass all these 3 warnings. Here we go. Element UL is not allowed as a child element of OL in this context. And it tells me it's on line 19 and it refers to the text directly. So it says right here on line 19, it doesn't like this appearing here in OL because it's not in an LI. So I'm going to undo and put it back where it belongs. And I'm going to move on. So I'll add a couple more skills here before we go. You guys have learned how to do ER diagramming. You've learned, let's see, you've also learned MS Access queries. Actually, I'll close that off first. You've learned SQL, at least some of it. You've learned pivot tables, solver in Excel. That's good for now. We'll keep those skills. So save it, come back to your resume, refresh it, and here's our nice list. So next, let's add an image to this page. We should put a picture of ourselves in here. So I'm going to come back up here above my H1. And I'm going to insert an image. So the image I'm going to add requires that I use the IMG tag. IMG stands for image, and image needs at least one attribute to make it work. If I just put image like that, hit save, it's going to do nothing other than put a little space where it thinks the image is supposed to go. So notice image is a bit different from the other tags. It's a single tag element. It doesn't need a close tag because there's no beginning and end of an image. There's just an image. So we need to now add an attribute to make this work. Now each of these tags, I've been calling them, are what we call HTML elements. Elements are ways of marking up content on a page like this, and elements have a predefined meaning and behaviors that are part of the HTML5 standard and what web browsers use to interpret the way the content should look. An attribute is part of an element. Every element has many possible attributes, and we use an attribute to customize that element further. So to insert an attribute, we put a space after the element name and then refer to the name of the attribute. Then we have an equal sign and then an open close quote, double quote. And we put the value of the attribute inside the double quote. So in this case, the source of our image is going to be the name of the file that we want to display. So let's go find an image and put it in the same folder as our website. So I'm going to go and grab an Uncle Rico image, and I think, let me see here if I can find one. Midterm 2, in class portion, web, let's see. Here we go, photo.jpg. What I want you to do is simply grab any image you have and stick it in the same folder as your resume.html website we're working on right now. So I'm going to copy and paste that photo.jpg and stick it right here. So to insert this photo onto resume, I'm going to type simply the name of the file, photo.jpg. Okay, photo's inserted. As long as these two files stay together in the same folder, this photo will work just fine. We go here and refresh. There's Uncle Rico looking good. Now if I were to go back to my folder and move this photo to a different folder somewhere else, my link would break. Alright, what would it look like? Let me show you right now. I'm going to move photo outside, go up a level, paste it here, and now I go back to my web page, refresh, and it says you've got a broken link. Alright, let me go back and put it back where it was, undo, website, paste it again. Oh, shouldn't have done that. 1 second. There we go, I'll paste it back in. So now the photo should appear once again. They're in the same folder, all is well. However, that photo is way too big. So I want to add a few more attributes to further customize the photo. I'm going to add width equals and set it to, I don't know, 100 px for pixels. So if I set just the width and not the height, the nice thing is that it will maintain the aspect ratio and automatically change the height to match what I use for the width, keeping the same ratio. So I've got an image, I've got my name, contact info. What else do I need? Well, I want to make another web page. I want to make a link to a page about me. So the way I make a link, if you've been through Codecademy, you'll know by now, is using the A tag. A stands for anchor. If I close it, and then there we go, add a closing tag. A is a 2-tag element. Whatever text or image or anything that I put right here inside the A tag will become an underlined link, or the image will be a link. So let's put some text here. I'm going to make a page called interests. All right. If I hit save and go back to my web page and refresh, interest shows up, but it's not a link. Why? Because I haven't customized the A tag to tell it where I want this link to go. So I do that by saying A equals href. All right, in href, I want to put the name of the file that I want to link to. So just like up here, where I link to photo.jpg, I'm going to link to an image, another page the same way, except href, which stands for hyperlink reference, refers to a file link and not a photo or not an image source. So right here under href, I'm going to put the name of the page. I haven't even created the page yet, but I'm going to call it interests.html. So let's save that, refresh our page. Now it's underlined in blue. I click on it and it goes nowhere. Well, it tries to go to interest.html, but that page doesn't exist. So I'm going to come back here to Sublime Text and create that page here in my website folder. Notice now that photo.jpg appears here as well. So right click on this new file. We'll call it, hit Control S to save it. Let's call it interests.html, just like we named it. There we go, interest.html, resume, photo. There's nothing in it though. If I click over here, that link should actually work now. If I go back to the web page, refresh, click on interests, it works, but it takes me to a blank page because there's nothing in it. Let me hit the back button. So what I want to do is I'm going to copy all of this HTML in my resume page, and I'm going to go and paste it in my interest page. But over here, I'm going to change the title now to my interests. I'll keep the photo, contact info. This link is linking to itself. What I should do is make this link back to my resume. So I'm going to change this to resume.html and call the text resume. So notice that the href value is not the same as the text that shows up in the link. Let's save this and show you what I'm talking about here. So I click on my interest link, and this takes me now, notice I'm on my interest page. It looks identical almost to the resume page, except that notice that it's changing back and forth from resume to interest right here. Notice also the URL is changing each time I click. Interest, resume, interest, resume. So I am going back and forth between two different pages, but they look so similar because I simply copied all of this content from resume and pasted into interest. So let's change interest a little bit further. Rather than just have my resume info, I'm going to put in here a paragraph that says, whoops, I've missed the OL here. I like stuff, and I would like to show a picture of stuff I like. Or I'll add some links. Let's add, I like a link to, I don't know, I'm super boring. I like Google. Okay. I'm going to change this to I like stuff like. I'm going to add a few links down here. Google, href. Now if I want to link to Google and not to just another file, I'm going to put http://www.google.com because I'm super boring. I also like Wikipedia. It's .org, I can't remember. What else do I like? I don't know. Star Wars, there we go. I think it's like Lucasfilm. Okay, that's pretty sad if I know that and that's accurate. Let's find out. All right, so here's my 3 links. Let's go to the interest page. I'm on interest right now and refresh it. There we go. I like stuff. Google, Wikipedia, Star Wars. Now I'm curious. Oh, I was right. I shouldn't be proud. Okay, so back here, Google, Wikipedia, Star Wars, they're appearing all in the same line. Why is that? Because over here, I listed them on separate lines. Well, A is one of those types of tags I was talking about before called an inline element. H1, P are both block elements, meaning they force a line break, 2 line breaks actually, after the content that's in them. Image and A, they're inline elements, meaning there's no line break forced after them, and they can be used inline in a sentence. So no matter, like you've probably already learned in class, HTML ignores white space or blank space, which means that I may as well stick these links right here on the same line as well as putting them on separate lines, because that's how they're going to appear. Well, I want them to be on separate lines, so here's what I'm going to do. Let's use a tag called BR, which stands for line break. And that's going to force a line break between each of those links. So save it, come back here and refresh. Now they're all on separate lines. Okay, so interest page, let's go back to resume. Now they're starting to look a bit more different from each other. So let's, now that we've learned all these tags, let's start dividing our page up into multiple sections. Or, even better, let's break our links and fix them again and then divide the page into multiple sections. So far, our website's pretty simple. We have one folder with a bunch of files in it. Well, eventually, when you work on a big website, it's going to get complex. There's going to be hundreds and hundreds of files and pictures and other stuff. You don't want to just have a big long list of all of them. You want to organize your website folder. So to practice organizing this stuff, let's make some folders. Start by closing each of these files out. I'll close. This is very important. Make sure you close those out at this point. Now, let's right-click on website, and I'm going to make a new folder, and it pulls up folder name down here. I'm going to call this folder interests, and I'm going to click and drag and put my interest.html file into the interest folder. If it'll let me, don't open it. Move, no. I may have to do it from, no, I may have to do it from the Windows Explorer view. So sure enough, I've got my, notice my interest folder that I just made inside of Sublime Text. It now appears here in my Windows Explorer as well. From here, I'm going to click and drag interests into that folder. Okay, good, it was smart, it figured it out. Let's make another folder now. I can either do it from here, new folder, or I could even just do it right here inside of Windows Explorer. And I'm going to call this one, new folder, images. Except I don't like capital letters, not that it matters. There we go, images. And I'm going to click and drag photo and put it in images. Okay, back over here now, let me collapse this. You should see 3 child elements of your website folder. An images folder, an interest folder, and a resume.html page. Inside these 2 folders should be photo.jpg and interest.html. Now let's go take a look at our page in a web browser. I'm on resume, I'm going to refresh it. Ah, my image is gone and my link is broken. Hit the back button. So because we changed the folder structure, our navigation or our links have broken, and now we need to fix those. Here's how we do it. Let's start with resume. So in resume, it's referring to photo.jpg. It thinks that it's in the same folder as resume.html, but it's not. We need to tell it to go inside the images folder first to look for photo.jpg. So what we type first here is images/photo.jpg. So let's save that. The images is the name of the folder. The slash indicates that images is a folder, and then photo.jpg is the name of the child inside the images folder. So save that, head back here, hit refresh. There we go, shows back up again. However, interest link is still broken. So let's fix that one next, just like we did with images. Down here in front of interests, we type the name of the folder first, interests/interest.html. Save it. Let's go back here, refresh. Notice how our link just changed from purple back to blue. The purple indicated that that link had been visited before. Blue means it hasn't. So because resume, even though we've been there before, because it's in a new folder and I haven't clicked on a proper link yet, it's turned back to blue. So I click on it. Here we are on interests. Now that I'm on the interest page, notice the link to the image on that page is also broken. And I'm guessing, well actually I'm not guessing, I know, the link to the resume page that goes back is probably also broken. Why? You can tell, you got a clue right up here. So when I clicked on that link, I was in a file. Let me go back. I'm on interest.html, which is inside the interest folder. My link on that page, let's open it up. My link is looking for resume.html, okay, which means that it thinks that resume.html is in the same folder as interest.html. So it thinks that it's inside the interest folder along with it. But it's not. It's out a level and in the main website root. So I have to tell this to go out of the interest folder and back up to the parent folder. I do that with a ... .. says exit the folder you're currently in, which means it'll go from interests up to is201 website, and then look for a file called resume.html. So I leave interests, I go to is201 website, and from here, can I see resume.html? Yes, I can. It's inside is201 website. So this link takes me back to resume.html the way it should. So I'm going to refresh this page first. After I got to save it, refresh it, click on resume. Good. It takes me back to resume.html, which is inside the main folder. Interests, I'm inside the interest folder, interest.html. Resume, I'm out of the interest folder, back into the main website folder. So our links are working again. However, I still have an image broken here on interest.html. Let's fix that one next. So make sure you're on interest.html. I look at my image. Again, it's looking for photo.jpg in the interest folder, which we know it's not there. So first step is let's get out of the interest folder. So this takes us where? All right, it's looking now inside is201 website. Now it's looking for photo in the is201 website. But is that where it is? No, is201 website just has two folders and resume.html. Photo.jpg is inside the images folder. So I need to go now into images folder. I do that by putting the word images/. So let's read this link together. It says to get to photo.jpg, go out of the folder you're currently in. And because I'm doing this on the interest page, it's going to go out of the interest folder into the 201 website folder. Next, go into the images folder. Okay, can it see images inside of is201 website? Yes, it can. So now I'm going inside of there. Then look for the file called photo.jpg. Cool, that one is right here and it can see it. So all should be well. I save it, refresh the page, there it is. So I've got two pages, back and forth I can go. My links back and forth are working and my images are working on both. Next thing I want to do, back to my code now, I want to style some of these, some of the content that I've created to make it look better than just the default Times New Roman text. So to create styles, I'm going to skip creating it inside the head tag, and I'm going to go directly to putting it in an external style sheet because I know you've been through Codecademy and you know how to do it the right way by now. So let's create a styles.css page. I'm going to right click on my website root, new file, Control S to save it, and I'm going to call it styles.css. Alright, so here it is, it shows up. I'm going to close interest for now. Alright, so a style sheet is where we list style definitions. And a style definition can be created in two ways. Let's start with overriding existing HTML element names. So let's create a style for all of our paragraphs. Actually, you know what? I've changed my mind. Let's make a body style first. So this first way of creating styles, where we overwrite element names, means that it will look on a web page for every time it sees the element we're referring to, in this case body, and it will edit the style of all the content inside of body. Okay, so let's start with that. It goes body, space, open, close, curly braces. I'm going to give myself some space here. And let's say we want to change the font family to Arial. So with the style, I have a selector, which is what I use up here to name the style. Then I have an attribute, like font family, and then a value. So selector, attribute, value. And I separate the attribute and value with a colon, and I close the value with a semicolon. So font family Arial, let's save that one, and go to our web page. And I refresh the page, but what? It's still in Times New Roman. So although I've created a style for body, I haven't told resume.html to use the styles on this page. To do that, I need to create a link between resume and styles.css, but it's not a link like interests or the Wikipedia and Star Wars ones I made before. It's not something that's going to take me to another page. It's simply a link to a style sheet that imports a bunch of styles. So we'll put that link not in the body, but up here in the head. Alright, so we use a keyword called link. Next, we need an href, just like we used with our anchor tag down here. And href is going to refer to the location of the style sheet. Now, because I'm on resume.html, the location of styles.css is right here in the same folder. Therefore, I'm going to use styles.css. Now, there's a couple of other attributes you need. I'm not going to make you memorize these. I'll actually give them to you on my exam. And I think the other faculty likely will too, but you might ask them just in case if you're not in my class. You're going to need rel equals style sheet and type equals text/CSS. So save that. Now we go over to this page, refresh. All of our font just changed to Arial. So back here, now that we've got the link set up, and all of my styles in styles.css will be used over here, let's add some more. So I like Arial font. However, I also want to change my background color. Background color. I'm going to make something, notice it put in my colon for me, something gray. Now I can either type a color, and if it's a common name, it'll work just fine. I can save that, now everything's gray. If it's not a common color, I might have to use what's called a hexadecimal code, which is a pound sign and some combination of six characters of either numerals or the letters A through F. So if I just randomly pick something, A7, D4, F2, I have no idea what that'll be. Let's find out. Save, refresh. Yeah, that's actually not so bad. Let's keep that one. No, never mind. I'm going to go back to gray. I happen to know that gray is any time you use the same character 6 times. I'm going to make it a somewhat light shade of gray, I think. No, I'm going to go dark. Let's make it 6/8 and see how that does. Okay, that'll do. So there's my background color. I also want to make a style for the paragraphs. When anything that I have in a p tag, I want to be, I don't know, let's make it a little bit smaller or something. Fonts, oops, let's break this down and give ourselves some room. Okay, font size. Let's make this 14 pixels. And just for fun, font style. Let's make it italics or italic. font variant. What can I do here? I think this is, no, I'm not going to use font variant. I'm going to just leave it like that. However, you know what I should do? I'm going to change the color of the font to green because that's how I am. All right, save, refresh. Now, only this text right here turned italicized, smaller text in green. Why is that? Because up here, when I did it under body, everything changed. The background and all font changed to Arial. Well, remember, the styles we define here only apply to the tags we use with the names body and P. And over here on resume, only this information is inside of a P tag. Interesting. Let's add one more P tag here. Let's make something that says, actually down here in front of our list, it says, I'm interested in a career in the circus. I'm really good at selling and eating carnival food. There we go. Close P tag. So we wanted some type of statement, and we put it in a P tag on our page. Well, there we go. P tag, I put it down here. And I realized, wait a minute. I didn't mean for this text to be italicized. I do want it green, but I don't want it italicized. And also, I think it should be bold, just for the fun of it. So what I'll have to do, I have some styles that I want applied to all paragraphs, and then other style attributes that I want unique just for this one paragraph. So I'm going to create a custom style that isn't associated with a single HTML element, something that I can apply wherever I want. I do that using the dot. So dot custom, I open and close it the same way. The only difference is I have a dot in front of it, and I can name it whatever I want. It doesn't matter what it is. I'll call it custom again to make it easy. So custom, I want the color of this to be blue, or I don't know, white for whatever reason. And I want font weight to be bold. Notice I had a couple options, bolder or bold. I'll stick with that. So I save this. Okay, I've got a style now. I come back here. Wait a minute, nothing's happened. But I want to use it right here on this paragraph. Well, if I create a custom style, then that means I've got to come back and specifically mention that or make that an attribute of the HTML element where I want to use it. I could use it in any element I want. I could put it right here under experience, or I could put it in here in this paragraph. But I reference it always using the same attribute, class. Class equals, and then I put the name of the style I just created, sans or without the dot on the front. I don't need the dot right here. When I refer to it, I do it just like that, but on the style sheet, I put a dot in front of it. That way this style sheet knows that there is no HTML tag called custom. It's just gonna, I'm making one of my own styles. So P class equals custom, I save it, come back over here, whoops, back to my resume. There we go, it's white and it's bolded. Now, like I said before, I could actually use this attribute anywhere I want. Let me put it here on this LI for skills. Save it, and skills, or everything inside that LI, it makes white and bold. But it's not italicized, and it's not in a smaller font. Why is that? Well, look back at your style. Those attributes, bold font, color white, apply to this custom style. But the italics and the 14-point font are in the paragraph style. So here on resume, both of these styles, P and custom, cascade together right here because I have both a P and class equals custom. All of the attributes are used between both styles except where there's a conflict. They both specify color. One P specifies green and custom is white. So when more than one style is being applied to a certain text, then the style that the definition that's closer to the text and custom is closer to this text than the P is, this will overwrite the outer style. It'll overwrite the P style in the attributes that conflict. So that's why it ends up being white instead of green. But all other attributes of P cascade in to this text. Okay, that's good on styles so far. The only other thing I want you to know about these simple styles is how to use states. So I'm going to make a style for our links. I want my links to be, I don't know, let's make a new font family. I want to make this Verdana for whatever weird reason we want. Let's go back over here. Now, do I need to go and add this A style into each of my A tags? Ask yourself. No, I don't, because it's not a custom style. It's overriding any A tag. Nothing else is needed. It'll automatically know to apply that font family wherever it sees the A tag over the word interests. Okay, so refresh. Sure enough, interest is now in Verdana. However, I don't like when I visited a page and it changes the color to purple. It just kind of bugs me. Also, I don't want my links to be underlined. All right, no problem. So I'm going to come back here to styles, and first of all, take off text decoration underline. But second, I can refer to the state of the A tag. I'm going to make a second style and call it, oops, let me fix that, A:visited. So I'm making a second style for A, but it only applies if the state of that link is visited. Okay, so in here I'm going to say color equals blue. All right, so all of these styles will still apply to any A, and then if it's been visited, this one will also apply. So back here I refresh. There we go. Even though I've been to that spot, or been to that link, it's now blue. However, text decoration, oh, I made a mistake. I meant to say text direction equals none. There we go. Refresh, there we go. Next though, I want to do something kind of funky when I hover over the A. A has another state. Hover. When I'm hovering over A, I want the font weight to be bolder. I want the text decoration to be underline, and that'll work. So save that. Let's try that one out. Refresh. Now I hover over it. It's bold, and it gets underlined just when I hover over it. Okay, so this is a sample of the attributes or of the styles you're going to need to know for the exam. But for a complete list, definitely take a look at the study guide. In the study guide, we give you the actual ones that you may be asked to use. I've used most of them here, but I think there are just a few more. But you'll also likely have that note sheet as well on the exam. Okay, so at this point, we have a page that's styled. Let's go ahead and style the interest page as well. So I'm going to open that one up. Ask yourself now, what do I need to add my styles to the interest page? Think about it for a minute. Well, look back at resume. Right here, I added the link tag. That's what links styles to resume, and I want to do the same thing for interests. So I'm going to copy that, Control-C, come here to interest, go to the same spot and paste it. Now I save it, go back to my web page and go to interests. But wait, there's no style. Think about it, what's wrong? What did I forget to do? When I pasted it into interests, I left the href, the hyperlink reference, exactly the same, styles.css. So it's looking for styles.css in the same folder where interest.html lives. It lives in the interest folder. But styles.css is not in that folder, it's in the IS201 website folder. Let me close this out so you can see. Each of these elements are child elements of that folder. So what do I do to go from interest.html right here to styles.css? If you said .. you're right. Okay, that takes me from interest to IS201 website. And from there, inside of IS201 website, I can then see styles.css. So I just need .. styles.css. Save it, refresh it, life is good. All my links, apply all those A styles. We're in good shape. Okay, the last task. We've gone through 2 days of class content and 4-ish of the Codecademy modules. Our last task is going to be to divide the content up into multiple sections on the page. So to do that, I'm going to need the div tag, which you've used at some point on Codecademy. I want 3 sections. So these are the sections I'm going to divide up in the body. I'm on resume.html, make 3 divs. All right. And then in each of these divs, I want to separate out and divide up the content. So in this first div, I want the photo, my name, and contact info. Copy it right there. Looks like I'm going to have to tab these in. Delete. In this next div, I want to have all navigation around my site. Right now I only have 1 link, so I'm going to drop that in there. There we go. My navigation's in. Let me give some space between these divs. And then in my last div, this is going to be the div that has all of my main body content. So I'm going to click in, or I'm going to cut everything from everything left in the website body and paste it in there. I'm going to tab it in because this is all child elements of the div element. Get rid of some other space. Okay, I have 3 divs. And I want to move these divs into various sections on the page. So to do that, I need to apply styles to these divs. But in divs, we're going to apply styles a bit differently. Instead of using the class attribute, like we did right here with P, we're going to use the ID attribute. So why? Can we not use class with divs? Yes, we can. We could use class, and that would actually be just fine. It's a good habit, though, to get into using IDs with divs. Why? Well, your website is likely at some point to have some programming language used with it as well to make it dynamic. Whether it's a client-side language like JavaScript or a server-side language like PHP, ASP.NET, or one of the many other languages out there. We need the ability to refer to individual elements on a page by name. So, for example, if I want to use a programming language to dynamically change the way all this content looks, I need this div to have a unique ID that's different from everything else. So class, I can apply custom to multiple places, right? Custom, this class is not unique because it's used with 2 different elements. So I can't say with a programming language, find the element with the name custom, because just like when you learn databases, if a primary key is not unique, you can't uniquely identify a certain record like you want to. An ID must be unique. I can't use the same ID name twice. So it helps, it just makes life better for the programmers. So let's go ahead and name these. This one's going to be our header section, this one's going to be our navigation section, and this one will be our main body. And it looks like I spelled navigation wrong as usual, so fix that. So we've given them 3 IDs. Save it, and so far you'll notice here on the page that nothing has happened. A div tag does absolutely nothing unless you apply a style to it. Well, we have applied a style. Header, navigation, and main body. So why hasn't it changed? Because we haven't defined what these 3 things are. So we'll do that in our style sheet with everything else. I'm going to do it here after the A, but it really makes no difference what order it ends up in. Now the way we define a custom style to use in an ID is a bit different. Instead of doing dot header, I'm going to use # header. And the # indicates that this style will be used in an ID attribute and not a class. So we're going to make a header, navigation, and main body. Okay, so for positioning, we need to understand the box model. So let me show you what I mean. The box model, well, which you hopefully have already learned by now, means that there are 3 attributes or style elements that apply to every single HTML element. Outside of the main content, let's refer to this H1 right here. Outside of this content, immediately around it, we have padding. Around that, we have a border, and around the border, we have a margin. Actually, let's style our image right now with those things. I'm going to make a style that'll be used for the image as an example of the box model before I get into editing these styles. So for image, let's start with padding. Notice how I've got padding or padding top, right, bottom, left. If I just use padding, it'll apply to all 4. Or I can specify padding dash top and just apply it to one of them. So I'm going to start by giving it 20 pixels of padding. Save it. Let's go and take a look at our image. Notice it's spaced now, 20 added pixels on all sides. We didn't see it on the right because there's no content over there to be pushed over. But you saw that change happen all over here. Okay, next let's add a border. Now a border, there's actually 3 attributes of a border and 4 sides. We have the width of the border, we have the style of the border, and the color. There's more you can see here, but those are the only ones we're going to mess with for now. So border dash style, we can have solid, we can have grooved, we can have dashed, any of those things. Border dash width, I'm going to make it 1 pixel. And then border dash color, I'm going to make it red. No, there's too much red in the picture. We're going to make it green. Okay, save that, go back to the image. Okay, now notice we have 20 pixels of spacing still on all sides of that image. Padding comes immediately outside and around the content. Next comes the border. It's solid, it's green, and it's 1 pixel wide. Now I actually could save myself a few lines and put all 3 of these elements on one line. If I just say border, I can say solid, 1 pixel, green, and do it all on one line like that. Save it, still looks the same. Cool. Next, let's talk about the margin. The margin is what comes outside of the border. Let's make this 10 px. Save, refresh, and notice outside the border it adds an extra 10 pixels. So again, don't forget, I can go to any one of these things and specify it on just one side. Padding bottom, for example. Save that, refresh, and now the border is directly around the image, but I get 20 pixels extra right here on the bottom. Margin still exists on all sides. So my question for you is, how many pixels are occupied, how many pixels high is this entire image element? Actually, no, we're going to have to do width because we set the image. Yes, the content itself is 100 pixels. Given that, how wide is this entire image, adding in the box model attributes? Okay, we start with 100 pixels and a margin of 10. Okay, the margin goes on the left and the right, therefore the width is up to 120 pixels, 10 pixels for the left and the right. Okay, 120 pixels, is that it? Well, no, we've also got a border. The border is 1 pixel, but it exists on both the left and the right. So now we're up to 122 pixels wide. How about padding bottom? Padding bottom adds nothing into the width equation because it's only on the bottom. So 122 pixels is the entire width occupied by this image. Anyway, I'm going to take off that bottom. I'm going to change this to 5 just to make this a little less unruly. I'm going to make margin 5 too. Okay, so that's the box model. Padding's first. It's directly next to the content, then border, then margin. Now, with that out of the way, let's talk about how to position these elements we've just created on the page, or these divs. So let me show you what I want. I want a header section clearly marked with a nice border that expands and contracts dynamically as the web page expands and contracts. Okay, I want it to be 150 pixels high, and I want it to contain the image, name, and contact info. Well, that's good because here on Resume, it contains the image, header, and contact info. We just need to specify where it's going to sit. So the first thing I want you to do is put an attribute called position and set it to absolute. And we're going to copy this into each one of these. Position absolute. What does that do? It says position absolute says that the div tag, header, navigation, and main body, we want them to ignore all other divs on the page and pretend like they don't exist. Alright, so what does that do? If I refresh, that means that if each of these three divs doesn't know the other exists, it's going to lay them on top of each other, just like that. So, what is that good for? Well, I'll show you in a second. The first step, though, is to set position to absolute. Now, the alternative, don't do this, but just watch me. I can use relative. Copy, paste, paste. Save, refresh. Relative is like what we had before. Relative says we're going to exist relative to the location of the other divs around us. So whichever div shows up first on the page will appear first, the second will appear second, and the third will appear last. Alright, so back to absolute. There we go. What I want to do next is stick the header or specify what part of the page the header will fill up and how it will behave when the screen gets bigger and smaller. The way I do that is by using a few other attributes. I'm going to use, let's start with top, and then, whoops, and then height, and then I'm going to do left and right. So there's three attributes or style elements that help to specify how the section will behave vertically. There's top, bottom, and height. And when it comes to horizontally, I've got left, right, and width. However, I'll never set all three of these. And let me show you why. So let's say I want, for starters, this section to start 10 pixels from the top. I set top equal to 10. I want the height to equal 150 pixels. If I set the bottom to something like, I don't know, I'm guessing I want it 500 pixels from the bottom, it's going to conflict with height. Why? Because what if the bottom of the page, what if 500 pixels from the bottom doesn't equal 150 pixels from 10 pixels from the top? Then they're conflicting. Let me refresh this. It's really tough to see what I'm talking about without putting some borders around these divs. So let me show you. For now, take off bottom, take off width, and to see what I'm talking about better, let's add a couple other elements. Let's add a border, and let's make it solid, 2 pixels, oops, and let's make it white. Let's make the background color of this section equal to a different shade of gray. I'll call it silver. Let's see what that does. All right, I'm going to save that. Oops, add that semicolon. I'm going to save that and add it to the other two as well. Save. Refresh the page. Okay, now you can see how much space is occupied by each div. But because the divs are all on top of each other, they're covering each other up. Well, I want you to see what the header div is doing. Okay, well that makes a problem. So how do I handle that? Well, hang on to our discussion of this for just 1 second, and let's talk about a different attribute. It's called ZIndex. ZIndex allows you to tell the browser which one of your sections, if they overlap, which one should show up on top. I'm going to set header to 3. Okay, let me refresh this page, and immediately my header section now shows up on top of that main body. Before, the main body was showing up because, well, it was the last one on the list, and it laid down header first, then navigation, then body. ZIndex says, okay, lay these layers down in the order the ZIndex tells you. Therefore, because these other two don't have a ZIndex, it lays those down first, and because this has a number at all, it's going to lay it down last. Well, I'm just going to come here and say ZIndex of this one, of navigation, is 2, and ZIndex of this one is 1. Now this is not pixels, it's just a number. And you can do negative numbers up to any positive number you want, and the smallest numbers will be laid down first, and the higher numbers laid down last. So save this, and it should act the same way. the header's on top. Notice that the H1 and the contact info, these are also in the header, but they're not fitting in that box that we just created. That's because we specified height to be 150 pixels. Well, we'll fix that in a minute. For now, let's leave that at 150. Okay, it's fitting 10 pixels from the top, just like we want it, and the height's 150. However, if I were to set bottom in there, let's say I wanted it 10 pixels from the bottom. Save. Okay, it didn't stretch down to 10 pixels from the bottom. Why? Well, because it's conflicting with height 150. So, for whatever reason, and I couldn't tell you the rule on this, it's choosing to use height instead of bottom. So if I were to take height out, save it, refresh, now the header stretches down to 10 pixels from the bottom, and as I move the page up and down, it dynamically changes the height of that of the header to always be 10 pixels from the bottom and 10 pixels from the top. That's how you make a div dynamically adjust to the size of the page. Well, that's not what I want the header to do. I want the header to dynamically adjust left and right, but always be 150 pixels high. No problem, we can do that. Let me undo, get rid of the bottom. Think and ask yourself now, what do I set left and right to if I want it to always be pinned to the left and right and then dynamically adjust the width? 10 pixels, 10 pixels. Save, refresh, there we go. Now again, I got to deal with this content that's flowing out of the header, but we'll deal with that in a second. For now, the width, it spans the entire width of the page, and it dynamically changes, but the height doesn't change. It always stays at 150 pixels. Okay, let's go and fix our other ones now. Navigation, I'm going to save myself some screen space here. Navigation, I want this one to start 10 pixels after the header, 10 pixels-ish, and I want it to be 150 pixels wide, 10 pixels from the bottom, and then automatically adjust vertically. So let's set the top, and let's say we have trouble adding this up. Well, we know our header is 10 pixels from the top, 150 high, which gives us 160. We haven't set the margin or padding though. We've just set the border to 2 pixels. So the default for margin and padding, if you don't set them, could be different from browser to browser. So we may have to make a little bit of a guess here. So 150, top is 10, that's 160. We know the border is 2 and it's on all sides, so add 4 more. That puts us to 164. But I want to start 10 pixels below that, so I'm going to try and see how 174 works out. All right, from the bottom, I want it to be 10 pixels from the bottom. Next question, do I set height? No, because the height will automatically adjust. Of the 3 attributes for the height, top, bottom, height, I only ever set 2 of them. Same thing with the width. I want it to start 10 pixels from the left. I want it to be 150 pixels wide. And then I'm not going to set right because I don't want it width and right to conflict. Okay, save that. Let's refresh the page. Ah, look where it put it. That's probably about the right spot. If you can look carefully at the top of the div right there, it's about 10 pixels from the bottom of that one. So I think we did well. However, this main body's in the way. Let's fix that one now. Main body, we want to dynamically expand and contract both vertically and horizontally, but we want it to fit nicely right here. We want it to tuck in and fit in this area inside the navigation and the header. Okay, no problem. To do that, I'm going to set the top, the bottom, and what else? Just think about it for a second. Hopefully you said the left and the right. Okay, so where do we set the top? Well, we want it to fit and line up nicely with navigation. Well, we set navigation to 174, so we can just copy that one. So it starts at the same height. Bottom, we want to be 10 pixels from the bottom. Left, where does it begin? Probably going to be at 174 as well. Why? Because, well, let's think about it. Navigation starts 10 pixels from the left, and it's 150 pixels wide, so we're up to 160. The border is 2 pixels wide, which gets us up to 164. But then we also want it to be 10 pixels inside of navigation, so we add 10 more, 174. Then lastly, we want it to sit 10 pixels from the right. Space, save, refresh. There we go. Our sections are lining up nicely now, although we still have this issue of the header content spilling out over the others because the content needs more height than we've given it. So let's fix that problem now. Over here in the header section on the resume page, I want to move my name and contact info to be inside of this image, to the right of it. So here's where we're going to use that float attribute that you learned in Codecademy. I'm going to create a div inside of this div, first of all, close, and put my H1 and P cut inside of this div. Home, there we go. All right, so what has that done? So far, absolutely nothing. Why? Because we haven't assigned this div any style. So let's assign it a style now. We can do this a few different ways. Well, first let's give it an ID. Let's name it. Oops. Let's name this sub header. No, I'm going to make it all one word. Subheader, like that. Save it. Again, still nothing's happened because we haven't created subheader. It doesn't exist yet over in the style sheet. So I'm going to put that down here at the end. Well, no, I'll put it here after header. Because it's a div and I used ID, it's hashtag subheader. Okay, so let's use that float attribute that you guys learned in Codecademy at this point. So I'm just going to stick in here a float right. Save it back over to the web page. And what does it do? It takes what's in that div and just ignores all other content and moves it up into whatever direction you specify. So I don't think I like it over on the right. Let's float left. Save, refresh, but then it pushes it over there and moves the image out of the way. It moves the image out of the way. I don't really like that either. I want the image over there on the left, and then I want the text over to the right of it. So neither of those are going to work for me. There's other ways we could continue to use float, but I prefer to just go back to our good friend position, absolute. And now, there we go. When I refer to position absolute for this subheader, this div inside of a div right here, this div believes its world is the div header. It doesn't see all these other divs over here when I use position absolute. It thinks that the only two things on its page are image and itself, and it thinks that the entire size of the page it's on is what's defined here in header. 150 pixels high, 10 from the left and right. So when I say 10 pixels, or sorry, when I say top 10 pixels, it's not thinking 10 pixels from the very top of the page. It's thinking 10 pixels from the top of the header that it's inside of, or the div that it's inside of. So top 10, let's do that. So the 10 pixels from right about here, I guess. And then we want to move it over from the left. So left, let's try that image is about 100. Let's do 120. Let's see what that looks like. Let's give it a little bit more space. 140. Okay, cool. So here's our page. Let's resize it. Notice that the header and the main body resize automatically horizontally, and the navigation and main body resize automatically vertically. So here's everything on the page. I go back to my interest page and everything's still just as it was. Well, if I want that interest page to look like this one, I'm going to have to create the same divs and tie it, well, it already is tied to the style sheet. So let's do that. Over here in interests, I'm going to put, actually since I know some of this is the same, I'm going to put my div, just like we did before, ID equals header, close it off, tab that in. Let's put the closing div right here. Oops, it already did it for us. I'm going to add my div inside of here. Div, tab those in. Close that subheader. Oh, and I got to give it the ID. ID equals subheader. Then I need my other divs for my navigation area. And then my last one for ID equals main body. Tab this stuff in. Div, oops, there we go. Save that. Let's click on interest now. Hey, it looks just like this page. Except I've got resume as a link instead of interests. And the content here in the main body changes back and forth. I'm going back and forth between my two pages. So, okay, this is a quick primer integrating a lot of the different things that you've done. And if you can do this, I'd say you're in pretty good shape to work on the exam. Now, there are some things we didn't cover here, specifically some attributes or style attributes that could be on the exam. So let's to know for sure that you're prepared, I would go back to Learning Suite, and let's take a look at the study guides for each of these days, so you know what you might be up against. I actually have already combined all those study guides into one note sheet. Here on the day of the midterm 2, you'll see some link to a note sheet that you can use. Now this could vary from class to class. This is for my class. Your instructor may be offering a different note sheet or no note sheet at all. So don't take this as gospel truth. But anyway, notice each of these elements. We've used each of these, except we didn't use all those the rest of the H's, but we used H1. We didn't use a span. That's something we could use. But it's pretty straightforward. That was covered in, I think, at length on Codecademy. That could be on the exam. Let's see, the style tag. That's if you want to put the style up in the head of the page instead of over in a separate style sheet. That could be on the exam. That's also, actually, you know what? I'm going to change my mind. That's not on the exam. You won't have to worry about style. Over here, we did font family, size, weight, color. We didn't do text align, and we didn't do line height. Those could be on the exam, so explore those if you haven't already. Let's see, text decoration, I did those. I didn't do background image, so take a look at that. That should be on Codecademy. If it's not, you can easily find an example of that on W3 schools or something like that. For position, for my exam at least, you only need to know how to use position absolute. I won't give you a situation where you need to use any of the others. ZIndex, you know that one, and I used all of these too. So everything I just did, except for maybe line height and text decoration, is stuff that I used all of it, and it could be on the exam. I think that's about it. Good luck.